I had many people tell me that Soldier of Fortune Payback was the death of the Soldier of Fortune franchise and that it was one of the worst first-person shooters of all time. I thought they might be exaggerating, so I played through it, and in this analysis we are going to be covering how bad is Soldier of Fortune Payback really. Hey everyone, Jarek the Gaming Dragon here, and before we can talk about Soldier of Fortune Payback, we need to talk about how to even install the game. Now, usually you just have to find a physical copy, because you can't get this game on Steam. But physical copies are a bit outdated in the PC marketplace. Most PC gamers don't even have an optical drive at this point. There is a better alternative. GOG added this to their library not too long ago, so it should be as easy as buying it on GOG, downloading it, and playing it, right? Not really. You have a lot of fixes you need to do first. This game is not a good PC port, and I really do mean there are a lot of fixes you need to do. When you start up the game and go to the options menu, this is all you have. These are all of your options. There is nothing more here. And to make matters worse, it's all underneath the same options menu. Even worse than that, this is a game that doesn't have a native 1920 by 1080 resolution option. This means that in order to get 1920 by 1080, you need to do a workaround fix. However, every single time you change something in an options menu, no matter how small it is, it could just be lowering the music volume, it resets your resolution. It unfortunately is not as easy as just changing something in an INI file and then never thinking about it again. If you need to make any changes, you will have to fix the resolution. On top of that, you can't just change something in an INI file, you need to do it through a hex editor. So every time this gets messed up for making any small little change in the options, you need to close the game, open the hex editor, fix your resolution, save in the hex editor, close the program, and open the game again. And in order for this to work, the in-game resolution has to be set to 1680 by 1050. So if you forgot to set it to that resolution before you close the game, you need to open the game back up, set it to that resolution, close it, edit it in the hex editor, close that program, and then open the game again. Just because you maybe wanted to lower the music volume down 1, or change your controls. To make things even better, this game is over 10 years old, so your computer is probably going to be running it at a very high frame rate. Nothing in-game caps it, and if the game runs over 120 frames per second, your bullets literally do not work. They'll phase through enemies and the game is not playable. Since there's no advanced graphical options to turn VSync on, there's no way to limit the FPS in-game, so you need to fix it out of game. My solution was very easy, just open the NVIDIA control panel and force VSync on there, but still this is something you have to do, otherwise the game is literally unplayable. But whatever, it's a bunch of really small things that add up to become one big nuisance, but they're not particularly difficult things to do. So you should be able to play the game now, right? Everything is fixed. Wrong. There's one more thing you need to do, and that's fix the audio. This is one of those games that requires legacy audio, so if you're running on an operating system above Windows XP, you're going to have to install this, otherwise audio will be all janky. You won't be able to hear reloading sound effects, helicopters will be louder than everything else, some dialogue just won't happen. You're going to need a legacy fix. It's pretty easy, just download a few DLL files, put it in your Soldier of Fortune folder, and then it's fixed. There's another fix you'll want to do, and that's changing the FOV. Unfortunately, the in-game FOV is rather small, and there's no way to change it in-game, so it's going to require a workaround. You can't just edit it in an INI file, that would be too easy. Instead, you need to modify a DLL file. Thankfully, PC Gaming Wiki is an amazing website that lets you download these DLL files without you having to do anything, for whatever FOV you want. 90, 100, above that, it's fine. Just download the DLL files, remove and replace the old one, and you're good to go. I'm actually not sure why the game doesn't allow you to change the FOV in-game, because putting in a higher FOV didn't break anything. Everything worked perfectly fine, and I changed it to 100. But okay, everything is finally done. The game is now playable. There is a few more things I did, but these are optional. I installed 2 mods, one of which is very small. It just puts attention into the bullet holes and makes the gore a little bit better. The second mod is a bigger one. This one unlocks some cut content that's still in the game's files. It also unlocks a few weapons that were originally console exclusives, but they didn't take them out of the game's files for the PC release. This mod will also unlock every weapon for every single player mission. This sounds like it might break the game, but it doesn't because they're all just the same weapons. This just gives you more variety and more options on every level. It's a great mod to have, and I would highly recommend installing it. But I would just like to reiterate, there's a lot of weapons in the game's files that are still there and are completely usable, but were just locked in the game and not able to be used. And I still find it hilarious that a few guns were console exclusives yet left in the game's files, and all you have to do is just unlock them with a mod and you can use them. And these cut weapons are almost completely done. The most unpolished one only has a few small things, like say the iron sights can clip through your face when you shoot, or there's no empty reload, but aside from that it works like any other gun, and the texture working seems to be completely fine. There's also an extra option to dual-wield the last SMG in the game in this mod. This was stuff also left in the files, and the animations are completely done. In fact, the only thing it's missing is just the audio sound effects when you're reloading. Other than that, it's polished. Okay, now that we've gone over all of that, we can play the game. It is important to mention that this game was not made by Raven Software. Raven Software was the studio, and a legendary studio at that made Soldier of Fortune 1 and 2. These games came out in 2000 and 2002 respectively. Soldier of Fortune Payback came out in 2007, so that's a pretty big gap from 2002 to 2007 without a Soldier of Fortune game. During Payback's development, Raven Software was rather busy with their own projects. They had Marvel Ultimate Alliance, X-Men Origins Wolverine, Wolfenstein, and Singularity they were working on, so they couldn't pick up a new project. Instead, Soldier of Fortune Payback was made by Cauldron. Cauldron's not really a well-known studio. In fact, their most well-known game before this was probably their first-person shooter History Channel game, and I'm not kidding you. So why Activision decided to go with Cauldron to make the next Soldier of Fortune game, I'm not sure, but it didn't pay off. I'm not even sure why it has a Soldier of Fortune name. It has nothing to do with the original two. In Soldier of Fortune 1 and 2, you play as John Mullins. In Soldier of Fortune Payback, you play as someone named Thomas Mason, which just sounds like his names are reversed. Shouldn't it be Mason Thomas? Also, I don't trust anyone with two first names. The plot itself is a revenge plot, you can roll your eyes here, and in general it's just very vague, it doesn't make much sense. I just played this game a few days ago, and I had to go look it up on the wiki to remember even the main character's name. To give a short summary, there's a big terrorist organization all linked together throughout numerous bosses. They're doing things that you don't want them to do, stop them from doing these things by killing them. And that's basically it. Some bosses are built up because you hear their names thrown around a bunch throughout the game, but again, nothing is coherent, and it just doesn't really make a lot of sense. But you know, whatever. No one plays Soldier of Fortune for the story, that doesn't really matter. How's the game? Here's where I need to give Payback some credit. And not just some credit, some actual praise. Because some of the things it does well are very important in making a good shooter. Let's talk about these guns. These guns are actually highly detailed for what the game is, and you have a lot of them. At the beginning of each mission, you can choose whatever gun you want to and just kind of experiment. This is great, I love it when games do this. But the guns themselves are actually well polished. They have good reloading animations, both an empty and a non-empty, and some of them even have an empty reload that's different if you swap weapons before reloading. To make a few examples, with the M16, the regular empty reload he hits the bolt catch. But if you fire out every mag in the bullet, swap weapons, swap back and then reload, he'll pull the charging handle. I'm not sure why the empty is different when you do this, but I'm not complaining. Same thing can be said for all the pistols. You either hit the slide release or you pull the slide back depending on whether you swap weapons or not. Although I think the best example for this attention to detail are the dual-wielding reloads. You'll have a different reload animation if you fire just the right gun, just the left gun, both of them, empty both of them, empty one of them, or empty the other one. These guns also have a lot of different attachments you can use. Some of them are specific to those weapons. For example, each gun has their own grenade launcher made for that specific weapon in real life. The only exception to this is the G36 and the XM8, which use an M203 for whatever reason. Possibly because they share animations, but still, wouldn't it make more sense to have them use their actual grenade launchers and share animations? I don't really know, that's the one blemish I can think of, but as a whole there's a lot of attention to detail to these weapons, and the animations are pretty smooth. The guns are certainly the high point of this game, and that's very important. If you don't play a lot of shooters, you might not really understand why that's important, so let me explain it. You can sort of look at guns as your in-game character. Your actual character that you're playing as is just sort of a blank state holding a gun, and that gun is going to dictate how you play the game. Maybe this gun is good up close and has poor range. Well, it changes how you play. Maybe you're using a sniper, completely opposite. And you have these options to choose whatever guns you want. This is a really big advantage and it adds to a lot of replay value. The best analogy I have for this is that you can look at guns in first-person shooters the same way you can look at a character in a fighting game. It totally changes how you play the game. And some guns may just suit you better than other guns, which may be the complete opposite experience that someone else is going to have. To make things even better, this game lets you choose whatever gun you want to choose at the beginning of each mission. Stuff like this is what really gets me hooked on games and gets me coming back. For example, I still play a lot of Rainbow Six Vegas 1 and 2 and Black Ops 1 and 2 because they give me these options. Granted, those games also have the advantage of kind of being good games, which this game isn't, but I do have to give it some praise here at least. And it's not just attention to detail, the guns do actually feel pretty good to use. It is a bit comical to shoot an enemy with just a pistol and see their arm fly off, but personally myself, I didn't get bored of this and I thought that was pretty fun. So the guns have good animations, they sound nice, you have a good variety of them, and shooting enemies feels good and they react accordingly. So if that's the case, why is this game so bad? Well, there's a lot of reasons. Some small stuff, some big stuff. The small stuff is all things like when you're sprinting, you can't strafe in any way whatsoever, and you can't even look left and right. You have to sprint in a straight line, and you can't do this for more than 15 or 20 feet before you run into asthma. Yeah, it's one of those games. Despite being trained in the military, you can't run more than 15 feet without losing your breath. You're also apparently not coordinated enough to do anything other than to run in a straight line. Then there's the aiming problem, which it does a personal pet peeve of mine. Aiming is toggle, and that's perfectly fine, but if you're aiming down sights, shoot and then reload while you're still aiming down sights. You'll reload and then immediately start aiming again. Even if you press the aim button as you're reloading, you're still going to go back into iron sights afterward. And this has killed me many times because it stops you from sprinting right after you get done reloading. And you can't cancel the reload by sprinting either. The iron sights themselves are also a bit weird. I'm not really complaining because it works perfectly fine, but you're not really using the iron sights as much as you're just tilting the gun upward at the enemy. It works, it's just an odd choice, and I would really like to know why they did this. Maybe they thought that their models weren't good enough to really use the iron sights, or maybe they were afraid of obstructing the player's view, like say the Black Ops 1 Uzi. I don't know. But those are all small things. Those are things you're going to get used to pretty quickly when you're playing this game. Let's talk about the big stuff that really kill the game. The level design in this game is pretty abysmal. It is as straightforward as you can possibly get. Now don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with a linear game. Some of my favorite games of all time are very linear, like say Half-Life 1 and Fear. But what Half-Life 1 and Fear do when you come into a combat encounter is give you an arena space to really fight the enemies. This game doesn't do that, it's basically always hallway shooting. The end result is a very one-dimensional game where you don't use many tactics. You can't flank the enemy because you have literally no ways to do it. The only way you can go is forward and shoot them. Compare that to one of the games I mentioned earlier, like Fear, where each combat encounter gives you this big sort of arena to fight in, which allows you to actually flank and outsmart the enemy, and this is a big downgrade. At the beginning of the game, you can kind of shrug it off and not really care too much, but this gets incredibly frustrating by the end of the game, because towards the end of the game, they start giving you enemies that can just instantly murder you. You turn the corner and enemies just murder you the very moment any of you is exposed, giving you no time to be able to shoot back. And since there's literally nowhere else for you to go but forward down that hallway, the end result is your tactic being nothing but trying to lure them out to you instead of running into their shotgun. And it's not just shotguns, enemies have other weapons that can kill you in one shot as well. In fact, the AI seem kinda almost like Red Orchestra 2 AI. You know those bots that are incredibly fucking stupid, but will also just randomly murder you out of nowhere at times? Yeah, that's kind of how they operate in this game. Sometimes they'll just charge at you even though they have a shotgun they can easily kill you with. Other times they'll just one-shot you with an AK. There's a pretty difficult section towards the end of the game that requires you to fight through a parking garage against hordes of SWAT-type units with saws that will again just kill you instantly, and many of them also have grenade launchers, which you know how that's going to end. The other really big problem this game has is how they deal with bosses. This game wanted to introduce a bunch of important characters, and wanted that fight with that important character to be memorable, I guess. So their method of doing this was to not change anything about them and let them be bullet sponges. Quite literally, the only reason these specific people don't die in the same amount of bullets as everyone else is because they have an important name. Oh, and trust me, they'll make sure you know this is an important character, because before the boss battle happens, there will always be this overdramatic cutscene playing out where you're pointing guns at each other and you could just shoot them, but instead you gotta throw a bunch of random poorly written insults. I cannot describe how bad the voice acting and writing is in this game. It's almost embarrassing to watch it, like the world's worst anime has somehow gone into my video game.
Is that supposed to scare me? Look around you! You're completely outnumbered! Do you really think you're in a position to make threats?
I'm sure of it, Gavin. I am going to kill you, and anybody else stupid enough to try to stop me.
All you're going to do is die a fool's death. Kill him!
Прикрой меня!
Wow! What the fuck? I kind of expected something like that to happen, but I didn't even get any chance to do anything.
Sometimes you'd think a boss battle is going to be coming up with one of these cutscenes, and then they just pull something like this.
Please, don't hurt me.
What
Hurt
was
you?
what was
I
that
already
cutscene?
hurt you. And after what I've just been through, I've got a lot worse than that planned for you.
It was good enough for your friend Miller.
I'm not Miller. And like I said, not gonna happen. Now, quit stalling me.
This voice
Spill
acting
your
is so
guts, Bashir,
bad.
or I'm gonna make a cave painting out of your fucking brains.
Aldine and the Moor. Our meeting not far from here. Just beyond the entrance of these very caves.
Thanks.
You're going to let me live? Weak American. Were our situation reversed, I would not hesitate to put a bullet in your head.
Good point.
And quite usually these bullet sponge bosses will have weapons that one-shot you, meaning you can dump an entire magazine of saw ammo into them just to have them shoot you once and die. These bosses at best are boring and at worst infuriating. I had one time where I even muted the game and turned on music just so I didn't have to hear a boss constantly spew the same nonsense as I died over and over and over. In fact, the only way I even beat that boss was that I found out his melee damage really doesn't do much, so I just walked up point blank to him and shot him a bunch with a saw until he died as he was meleeing me the whole time. Otherwise, he would murder me instantly with a grenade launcher.
It's gonna happen again because he's around the box and he's not. Oh, never mind. I take that back. Maybe actually just getting him to try to melee me is the proper thing. Because he doesn't do any damage to me when he's doing that. Never mind. I take it all back. He'll eventually just shoot point blank. That's a strategy, I think. I'm gonna try it. See if I can get enough health back by running at him. I think we found our cheese strat. He doesn't really seem to be doing much. Yes, we found the cheese strat, and it worked.
But by far the biggest problem I had with the bosses was one boss named Nom. This boss just sits on top of a cliffside and shoots RPGs at you, far away. That is mildly annoying, but whatever, not a big deal. My problem, however, is that the game was literally bugged and I could not kill him. But I wasn't sure if I was doing something wrong because every boss in this game has a fuck ton of health. I spent an hour here trying to get by this part, through numerous means. I kept stopping to look up guys and they just said, yeah, just keep shooting him, he'll eventually die. That didn't work. I shot him forever and nothing was happening. I even reloaded the level choosing a 50 cal sniper, put the entire ammo I had with that sniper into his head, and it made no difference. I then looked up a video walkthrough and he only shot the enemy about 8 times with a regular sniper and he died. So at this point it's clear that something was going wrong and that he was literally unkillable, making the game unbeatable. So I went to look up cheats and I found a cheat that should have helped me. It was the kill everything cheat, which should kill everything on the map. Cool, let's get this working. Well, unfortunately, the console doesn't work in-game, and in order to get the console to work, you need to add a parameter to the shortcut. But for me, this simply would not work no matter what I did. So I've spent a while kind of messing around with that trying to get it to work, and again, it just wouldn't work. So I gave up and moved on to my backup for my backup, trying to find a save file. Quite conveniently, I found a website that has a save file for every single checkpoint in the game. Not every single map, not every single level, just every checkpoint in the game. And I found a save file that was the checkpoint right after killing this guy, so I missed nothing. But right after killing this guy was literally the end of the level. You walk 100 feet and the level's over. I cannot describe how angry this made me.
Watch this. This is probably just the end of the. That was literally the end of the fucking level. All that time to get it to fucking work just to beat the fucking level. Jesus fucking Christ. What a piece of shit game.
It took me about an hour and 15 minutes to get by this one part because the game was bugged and didn't work like it was supposed to. But okay, give me about 10 minutes and I was fine and I was over it. I knew how bad this game was going to be, but I didn't expect a game-breaking bug, or numerous of them. The next problem I had with the boss was the final boss of the game. You know, the whole game is built up for this one boss, but he was kind of underwhelming. He had a shotgun and I could just shoot him at range until he eventually died, and I guess I would rather take that than the bosses that kill me instantly over and over. But that's not my problem with this boss. My problem with this boss is that this is the end of the game, and as soon as you beat the boss, you get this cutscene.
Son of a bitch. It's just one thing after another.
Great.
Who's there? What's going on? What the?
What kind of a cutscene is that?
You're going to wake up with a hell of a lamp. But at least you'll be waking up, which is more than I can say for Ethan Wall. And speaking of Ethan, thanks for doing my job for me, hero. That little apparatus of his is going to make my new employers very happy.
Bitch.
Fucking voice acting.
It is safe, secured, and it is installed as planned.
Good. If it is war the Americans want, it is war they shall receive.
And it is the mercenaries of the world who shall reap the rewards.
Indeed, they will.
Is that literally just the end of the game? That is literally the end of the game. What?
I'm not kidding you, that's how the game ends, on a massive cliffhanger, which you will never get another Soldier of Fortune game, because this one was terrible. I've gotten a few comments from people that do actually like this game, and I can kind of see where they're coming from because the guns are pretty awesome, but everything else sucks. Or at the very least is very mediocre. Graphically is passable, but is nothing really special. I've seen some people slam it saying it's one of the worst looking games of all time, but really it doesn't look that bad for 2007. It just doesn't look great either. To sum this game up, it may have some great weapons, but the rest of the game sucks. And even though the game does have great weapons, you don't really get much of a chance to use them. You select them at the beginning of each mission, and then you have a very long time before you can choose what gun you want to choose again. Each level also doesn't really have much ammo aside from whatever the enemies are carrying, which is almost always an AK and an M16, so you're going to be using the AK and the M16 throughout most of the game regardless. If they simply did something like say what Rainbow Six Vegas did and had a green box that allows you to change whatever you want in the middle of missions, this would have been a huge help to the game. But as it stands, the game is only 5 hours long, and you'll get to be able to use maybe half the guns before you beat the game. And keep in mind that 5 hours includes the hour of me screwing around trying to beat the game where it was literally unbeatable. So it's closer to only around 4 hours. This just is not a very good game, and I understand the frustrations people had. It's not necessarily one of the worst first-person shooters of all time, but it's really not very good. The only good thing about it is that I'm finally done playing it and that I will never have to play it again. Welp, I've done the entire Soldier of Fortune franchise. I'm not sure what I'll do next, maybe I'll focus on The Darkness as I've been wanting to make a video about The Darkness 1 and 2, so I don't know. If you want to check that out, come check out my Twitch where I stream this entire game, maybe join my gaming cave over on Discord linked in the video information, and if you really want to help, check out my Patreon or sub over on Twitch. I have extra roles for you to be able to get some extra stuff and maybe play games with me. Hopefully I'll see you guys over on Twitch or on my next video. I'm Jarek the Gaming Dragon, thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you next time.